everyone, back to the More YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day. I pulled over from doing a bit of car karaoke to give you my thought on this story. It is a story that's been going around for a little bit, but there's been some new pieces written about it, particularly from Jeremy Wilson in the Telegraph, about the Manchester City charges in the case that has now begun in private of all things, not publicly, which has frustrated a lot of the Premier League clubs. And I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. The Premier League clubs have all been kind of held hostage by FFP and PSR, including Newcastle United, you know, richest owners on the planet, but can't spend a bean in January, and a disastrous summer transfer window for us as well because of PSR restrictions, and we lost two very exciting young players in the shape of Elliot Anderson and Yankuba Minter just to balance the books. So all eyes are on this case really for Manchester City, and people want to know. People want to know what's going on. People want to know what the punishments are potentially going to be. People want to know about the severity of the charges, but the fact that it's being held behind private doors probably gives you a little bit of a noise and a smell as to where this is going to go. I'm going to give you my opinion in just a minute and what it could mean for Newcastle United, because we are a Newcastle channel. After all, we do like to talk about all things football, but predominantly Newcastle. So the whole thing about Manchester City, if you have been living under a rock or you've just happened to have come back from a space station, hello and welcome back to Earth. If that is the case, Manchester City are being accused of 115 alleged breaches of FFP PSR rules. I think within that remit, there's 54 charges, you know, that apply to the Premier League. I think there's, you know, they're broken down into various different iterations. If you go out on Google and find it, you'd have to be Rachel Wright, remember the numbers, but they're in the shit, basically. It's what it is. They have broke the rules on several occasions, and I'm going to give you my opinion about that whole thing in a minute and why I don't really want to beat up Manchester City about it. I'll explain to you why. You might be screaming at the screen right now, or your laptop, whatever you're watching us on. Thank you if you are subscribed for more. But yeah, the whole thing is Manchester City have really just broken the rules. Before, the rules were probably more heavily implemented than they are right now. You know, ask the likes of Forest, ask the likes of Everton, even Leicester, who thanks to Nick DeMarco, the wizard that he is, managed to get away with their recent sanctions. But yeah, Manchester City have been breaking the rules for quite a long period of time. You don't get to go and get the best manager arguably in world football, the best players in world football, pay them copious amounts of money without probably, you know, spending more than you're bringing in. That's basically the rules, and that's what Manchester City have done for a large period of time. But is what they've done really wrong? You know, just step back a little minute as a football fan of another club that isn't Manchester United, Arsenal or Liverpool in the main, those three clubs, right? What have Manchester City really done here? So Manchester City were always the Manchester whipping boys. You know, they always had the piss ripped out of them by their rich neighbours, their you know, trophy-laden, arrogant, wanker neighbours on the other side of the fence, who are still that way, even though they don't win trophies anymore. Yes, a couple of little cups here and there, but you know, they're not up at the top of the table anymore, but they still think they are. So they were the butt of the joke for such a long period of time. And then Sheikh Mansour came over with all of his money, and he transformed that Manchester City club from, you know, somebody who was in the playoffs playing Gillingham away and feeding the goat, you know, to a world force in football, winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, and having Erling Haaland smashing in goal after goal after goal, and Kevin De Bruyne pulling the strings. And is that really wrong? Is that really bad? You know, to challenge the status quo of football, that's a question you've got to really ask yourself here. You know, we can go back to little old Blackburn Rovers when they put Alan Shearer for a world record, or British record for even. You know, teams have to do that to beat the status quo. Do we really want a league where it's just Manchester United, Arsenal or Liverpool that win it year after year? Do we not want challenge? Do we not want people to try and, you know, break that, you know, that little pack up and just make the league more exciting? Very, very rarely do you get somebody like Leicester City come along and do what they did, which was fucking remarkable, by the way. And the Premier League have tried to do them for it anyway, you know, years down the line. But, you know, you don't really get that happening. That was an unbelievable season for Leicester City. Everything, you know, the stars aligned, and also the rest of the other teams that you would have thought would have been the usual suspects were just a little bit shit that season as well. I'm not taking anything away from Leicester. Leicester fans probably know that as well. But this won't happen. So to get to that point, you have to be bought by a very, very wealthy person or group or consortium and spend fuck tons of money to get to that level. You have to buy really, really good players. And that's how you become what Manchester City become. That's how you become what Chelsea became. You know, before Abramovich's money, they weren't all that, were they really? You know, they were kind of like a retirement home for old players like, you know, Hullett and Hoddle and people like that, who were great players once upon a time, but were just coming to Chelsea to kind of, you know, eat appetito meals and watch the TV. That's basically what they were. But then Abramovich Abramovich turned them into a world force, a superpower, got this brilliant young manager who was one of the world's best and won trophy after trophy after trophy. And because of that, Chelsea are a huge commercial entity now. And if they weren't, they'd be totally fucked, because they just seem to be able to buy whoever the fuck they want on a 20-year lease plan is what they do, you know. So they're like fucking DFS deals going on in football is Chelsea, the loophole FC. But going back to my main point here, you know, yes, City may have breached the rules and everything else, but, you know, they transformed that club, and the memories that they've given those football fans, the infrastructure and the investment they brought to Manchester because of the people who own them and the business relationships they have, it's probably benefited that city as well. So that's something that has to be taken into account. But going back to the case itself and what I think it means for other clubs, particularly Newcastle United. So the other clubs are frustrated that this is being held behind closed doors, and rightly so. They want to know what's going on because they've all had to adhere to the rules. They've all been fucked. You know, Everton got done 8 points. You know, Forest got done, was it 4 or 5? I can't remember what it was. But they paid their dues, you know, they lost points and they were punished. And other teams have been threatened to be punished. I think Newcastle were threatened with a 10-point deduction had they not cashed in on Anderson and Minter to balance the books. And the Premier League would have probably sanctioned that, and they would have put that on Newcastle. But this is a huge pressure cooker for the Premier League. They really are up against it here. So Manchester City will have no doubt some of the best lawyers that money can buy to get themselves out of this deal. They managed to swerve that UEFA one, I think. I don't know whether it was a postponement or a swerve. But I think they will do the same thing with this. I really do. I don't think the punishment will be as severe as what some people are expecting or hoping for, even as football fans. But ask yourself this: why are you hoping for it as a football fan? If you're not a fan of Manchester United, Liverpool or Arsenal, you want City to not be battered for this, because it opens up the door for all of the Premier League teams to spend more money. You know, and you're not going to be a Portsmouth if you've got very wealthy owners that can pull you out the shit. People have talked about this before, an emergency pot. Gary Neville's mentioned it. If the owners are happy to put an emergency supply aside that can help pay for the club's overheads, then there's no danger of the club going under, which is what happened with the likes of Portsmouth that were so close to the wall when Eri was doing his deals out the window. You know, that's what happened there. That's not going to happen with the likes of Newcastle United, because their owners are so ridiculously wealthy. They've probably made another billion just while I've rattled on for 7 minutes here. You know, that it's not going to happen. Same with the Villa owners as well. It's not going to happen. So the Premier League really have to look at this. But going back to this case, I think it's going to last for 10 weeks. We're going to find out the ruling, I think, early next year. So when this Premier League season ends, and it will be really, really interesting to see what happens to City. What do I really think is going to happen? I don't think they're going to get relegated. People talking about that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll have a fair points deduction, but looking at how good they are, they can probably make that back up. But I do think that they'll kind of get away with a bit of a slap wrist, and then that opens up the door for a lot of shit to go down, Newcastle United in particular, because if we're not as worried about financial fair play as we previously were, we can spend more in the market, we can bring in better players, we can invest in that squad in key areas and not tiptoe around it because the PIF will give us money to do it. Same with Aston Villa, you know, who invested in players and got themselves in the Champions League and did brilliantly the other night against Young Boys. You know, they'll be investing in more players as well to keep them in that Champions League, that, you know, picture. So this is a huge thing for the Premier League, a huge thing for the clubs that are within it. If Manchester City don't get nailed to the wall and relegated like people are thinking or hoping that they are from probably those other three clubs alone, then it's open season for the rest of the Premier League to do this. I mean, there is a danger that the Premier League will get sued, you know, counter court cases by clubs that missed out on European football and revenue streams because of the points deductions that they had. So there is issues there as well for Premier League to deal with, but that's their problem to deal with it. If they don't make an example of City, then they run the risk of this whole house of cards falling down, and I think that's exactly what is going to happen early next year. And for Newcastle, it means we can spend a lot more money in the transfer market and help to get this team more successful in the park than it is already. So let us know in the comments below what you guys think about the whole City court case. You know, what's your views on it? Do you think, like me, what have they really done wrong apart from completely transform their football club from, you know, from relegation fodder to you know, a European force? Would you not want that for your club? You know, so has City really done something wrong here? They've just broke the status quo? Or do you think you break the rules, you got to pay the price? We're always keen to hear from you. If you're a City fan, drop us a comment in too. We'd love to hear from you guys as well on this subject. It's very, very topical. It's going to rage on for a while, but I do think the impact and the outcome of this case will definitely set a whole new precedent in the Premier League in terms of spending with the other clubs. Smash a like, guys. Subscribe if this is the kind of thing you like. Keep it evermore. Move about with more content this week. Have a belter. See you later.